Bison Media Zone on WDAY Xtra.
And welcome everybody to the Bison Media Zone on WDAY Xtra, back in our palatial studios. Mike McFeely joining us from the Forum of Fargo Moore. And always great to see Mike. As you tweeted out earlier this week, football season never really ends, which is especially in Fargo, it never ends.
We've talked about this before, but Bison football season just doesn't end anymore. It used to be there was clear delineation between the end of the season and then signing day, and then spring football, and then fall camp. And now it just all jumbles together, and it never ends. It's always Bison football season.
Makes for some good content, especially on a Wednesday.
Well, you know, if you're in the line of work that we're in, that's probably a good thing for us.
And speaking of the Bison, actually just added to their commitment list for 2025. Grafton, Wisconsin big man James Nellis just announced his commitment. He looks like a large individual. He is at 6'4", 290 pounds. Washington State, Northern Illinois, Eastern Michigan, Wyoming. He had 5 FBS offers, and he chose North Dakota State.
First of all, didn't know there was another Grafton.
Yeah, neither did I.
Grafton, Wisconsin.
Yeah, just north of Milwaukee.
Hope it's as cool as the Grafton in North Dakota and has a great golf course like the Grafton in North Dakota does. But, I mean, these are the kids that's the blueprint for North Dakota State offensive linemen. Tall, 6'4". He's already 290 pounds as a high school kid, so you're looking at 310 by the time that the Kramer and the gang get done with him in a couple of years. But offensive linemen they're long-term projects.
Correct.
You know, you can start a true freshman quarterback, although you'd prefer not to. You can start a true freshman running back, although you'd prefer not to. It's really, really odd to start a true freshman offensive lineman, and about the only time teams would do it, I would think, was like during the pandemic season.
Desperation.
We don't have any other bodies. So talk to me in 4 years about if this is a good recruiter now.
I will say this, though, for what NDSU's hit so far, 2 offensive linemen, 1 defensive lineman so far in the class of 2025, which that's your bread and butter for any football team, specifically North Dakota State.
Well, I mean, if you're an FCS team, do you just totally stock up on offensive and defensive linemen, knowing that in 3 years they're probably all going to go anyway? If they're any good, they're going to end up playing in the Big 10 or the Big 12 or
I thought the same
wherever.
thing.
So is that the new model?
I think it's worth a conversation with the new head football coach about exactly recruiting strategies on
insanity. And again, you know, we learned last week or even earlier this week the 2 kids from North Dakota. I mean, man, that puts them in a tough spot. It just, I mean, what do you do?
And in April or early May, there's nothing you can do. You're out there fishing for whatever is out there.
And I'm not going to pin this solely on those 2 kids from UND because it happened in North Dakota State with the wide receiver as well. But, you know, when you're leaving a team in May, they don't have any options anymore. And so, you know, you can talk all you want about, you know, these are my brothers and, you know, we're all one big family here. But really, I mean, you're really hurting your brothers when you leave in May. If you leave at the end of the season back in December, the team has a chance to try to plug that hole.
There's a time to adjust there.
Teams at this point really don't have many options other than JUCO kids or who's left in the portal.
Well, that's my next point about it.
And if you're still left in the portal at this point as an offensive lineman, with all due respect to those kids,
there's a reason
why you're still in the portal.
Now, skill position is another point, and that goes to Eli Green, who a couple reports out there that he's going to take an official visit to Iowa State, and there's complete logical sense there with both Tyler Roll and Noah Pauley, his former position coach.
That's where all of our minds went immediately.
Exactly, at Iowa State, and it would not shock us if maybe this weekend or early next week maybe he announces a commitment there. But that's the point of what you're talking about. Skill position, if you're still in the portal, is that different? Because there's so many, is there a chance for NDSU to address that there?
Yeah, and again, that would be a question for the head coach. It doesn't seem like NDSU is very active in the portal.
Not at the moment, no.
It just, and it never has been something that they've been really good at. It doesn't look to me, they've had, Braden Thomas was an impact player out of the portal. Tamarick Williams, you got to count him. I mean, he's in an NFL camp. He was a good back for a couple of years for NDSU, 3 years. But other than that, I don't know if there's really been anybody out of the portal that has had a major impact at NDSU. And you look at, you know, South Dakota State's the team that NDSU is trying to catch up to now because they've won the last 2 titles. And the Jacks have used the portal very strategically and very well to get either drop downs from FBS or move ups from NAI in Division II, and yesterday or the day before, a in-conference move from North Dakota and an offensive lineman who's probably going to play for him.
I would imagine he's going to start.
The Jacks have now, I think, 2 transfers on the offensive line, Division I, that'll start for them this fall, and they had to plug 3 holes, and it looks like they're doing that with the use of the portal, which, I mean, again, NDSU just hasn't quite done that.
Yeah, and that's intriguing. I don't know if that will change. The new head coach said that in his opening press conference about the leveraging the portal was something he said over and over again in his introductory press conference. Again, we'll see how that happens. Green leaving on whatever it was, April 28th after spring ball, though, puts the Bison in a really intriguing spot at the wide receiver spot because of the lack of returners there. Now, the Bison have 2 experienced guys who are back. Braylon Henderson's back for a 6th season. Raja Nelson had his best year by far as a Bison last year. He ended up having a huge end of the season. Those 2 experienced guys certainly lead off the table for the Bison at the wide receiver spot.
We seem to talk about this every year when NDSU has a receiver graduate, in this case, leave through the portal. But who's going to be the guy to step up and be the A1 receiver? Because what you learn and what everybody knows is that if you don't have an A1 receiver, there's no need to double team receivers. And so that, you know, one of the reasons that guys have a lot of catches is oftentimes because they're doubling Christian Watson.
Somebody else.
Right. You know, they're putting everybody on Christian Watson. If you don't have that guy that other teams need to worry about in the secondary and they can play 8 guys near the line of scrimmage, it's really hard to run the football, and it's really hard to fool a defense because you just don't have a deep threat. We talked about that 2 years ago. They didn't have a deep threat. And now it looks like possibly they're back in that same boat again.
And both these guys are good possession receivers, but both of them are under 6 feet tall. So they're not
more like
deep
slot
threat.
guys.
That's each of them. But Raja certainly emerged as a guy you could put all over the field, not necessarily at wide receiver. He could be a running back, and
he
was using
They
that
ran some jet sweeps with him and things like that. And I presume that North Dakota State had plans to do those things with Eli Green, but it's just not going to happen. They need Mekhi Collins to step up. Carson Hegerly is hurt, it sounds like, and he's not going to be probably ready to go in the fall. I don't know that for sure, but just doing the numbers thing on how long he might be out because of injury. And so who's going to be that guy? They need somebody who can run past a defensive back and stretch the field a little bit.
We were at the Green and Gold Showcase. There were 2 guys that were on display. You mentioned Mekhi Collins was one. Bryce Lance was the other. And I heard from the coaching staff that they raved about each of these guys, that they had really good springs. They need it. Bryce Lance is in his 4th year in the program. Collins is in his 3rd year. Both of them are huge. Both are 6'4" and 6'3". Those are guys you're talking about stretching the defense.
And where it hurts, again, is the Bison have an experienced quarterback. They have a 5th-year starting quarterback, so everything was in place. You have your 5th-year starting quarterback. You have a huge running threat with Cole Payton, and he can throw the ball as well. They figure that they're going to be able to run the ball some. They like this young running back,
Marty Brown.
Brown. And so the piece that was really going to open all of that up was Eli Green, and Cam Miller was going to be able to get the ball to him, and now it's all sort of up in the air again.
And that's the intriguing part, because you look at the returners. We got a graphic here of guys that caught passes, just wide receivers last season. Mike, it is a precipitous drop-off after Nelson and Henderson. These are career catches after that with Tyler Terhawk, Bryce Lance, Chris Harris, and Mekhi Collins combined there. I'm not a great math mind, but that's 7 total catches after that. At the wide receiver spot. That's concerning.
7 returning after Nelson and Henderson. So it's, I mean, we joked last spring, a year ago, about how the Bison had 25 receivers in camp and 2 running backs, or 4 running backs, which was odd. But they need somebody to step up and be the guy, be the man. And, again, not to keep going back to it, but Eli Green became the guy late last year. And now they're back to square one again.
Now, again, it's not on wide receiver because they use the tight end, and they have Joe Stuffle back, who's a really good pass-catching tight end. But we saw this play out in spades at the end of the 2022 season when they're going to put 9 guys to stop Hunter Lipke, and when then Hunter Lipke got hurt, Cam Miller completed 1 pass against Incarnate Word. I know they still won the game, but they were left in that boat.
Yeah, and obviously the Jackrabbits, knew that too down in Frisco. And if that happens again, I mean, They opened the season at Colorado.
Not great.
Not great.
No.
You know, I mean, you have to, and Colorado would probably be able to go one-on-one with their cornerbacks anyway.
And you have Travis Hunter, one of the best players in the country in that spot.
And so maybe that's not a great example, but hey, if NDSU hasn't beaten SDSU since 2019, and they get them at home this year, it might help to have somebody who can get down the field.
Now, off of that, and this is a ton of pressure to put on an incoming kid, Jackson Williams, young man from Omaha, from same high school that Cole Payton played at Omaha West Side, they have high hopes on him. Again, he's not a big guy, but he's a burner. We've seen wide receivers, R.J. Urzendowski comes right to mind as a freshman,
true freshman,
make an impact. But that's a spot. Matt Enzo used to tell me, the further you're away off from the ball, the more impact you can have on the field.
Early, early on,
right.
I mean, yes, no doubt.
But that's a lot of pressure on a kid who hasn't played it down.
I mean, and R.J. Urzendowski was a special case because he was incredibly mature and knew. And wow, did he play
the ball?
Did he play a huge role that true freshman year? And you just pointed out, he caught the ball when it was thrown to him. And that has been a problem for some of these young receivers at NDSU. And we saw that in the spring game, or the spring showcase as well.
I know offensive line, before we go to break, is #1 on your priority list. Where do you put wide receiver for the upcoming football season?
Number 2.
Okay.
It has to be.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the defensive side of the ball, the cornerback.
I would say cornerback would probably, to me, is probably 2 in my, just because of the experience there.
What we've seen NDSU, at least in short stints, have to go deep into their depth chart to play. They played a national championship game against James Madison, and they had moved a receiver to cornerback like 5 days before, and then Marquise Bridges, played
unbelievable game,
and that was one game. And they had a defensive line that was was it good? And I think they're going to be good this year up front as well. But to me, you can maybe cover up more. Especially in the Valley, which is a running league for the most part. You can cover up more on your cornerbacks.
We talked about this, about offensive line. I don't know if this is a case of missing out on guys as well, because we thought when Christian Watson came through, that was going to open up the recruiting pipeline and say, okay, but I don't know if that was just the canary in the coal mine kind of. Like, he's such a unicorn that was able to come here. I don't know if you're going to get other great wide receivers to come here.
No, that was a set of circumstances that were just, it's like a once in a lifetime or once in a generation thing. And he developed as well.
No doubt.
Remember, there was
he couldn't catch the ball
There was a long time there where we were going, okay, you keep telling us that this kid is great, but needed to do some growing up, needed to do some maturity stuff, needed to catch the ball, needed to stay healthy. And then once they got through all of that, Noah Pauley played a big role in that.
No doubt.
Christian Watson was unstoppable his last couple of years.
And also to that point, before we go to break, Zach Mathis was in the same boat. Mathis last 2 years turned into a really good receiver.
Good. Yep, not a burner, but a guy that, because of his size, could get open and catch the ball
all the time.
Yep.
No doubt.
Tough catches.
We'll take a break. Come back. A couple other items we want to talk about here on the Bison Media Zone. We're back with Mike here on WDAY Xtra right after this. Welcome back, everybody, on the Bison Media Zone. I love we got news happening as we're on the air. South Dakota head coach Bob Nielsen, you see there, has got a contract extension through 2027. Coyotes, of course, made the FCS quarterfinals last year, lost to North Dakota State. But you were, it's a great anecdote here as we're off air. You beat the Bison, you get a contract extension, right?
I know.
List the guys off here, right?
Well, Bubba Schweigert beat NDSU last year, got an extension. Somewhat, in some people's minds, somewhat surprisingly. I think Nick Hill got an extension after Southern Illinois beat the Bison in the spring season.
And Bobby Hauck just got one.
And that was, I mean,
granted,
obviously there's more. He got to the national championship game.
But he did beat the Bison.
Yeah.
And now Bob Nielsen did at South Dakota. And there's a whole overture of things changing there.
I mean, Bob Nielsen, whether they beat the Bison, they also lost to the Bison badly, by the way.
They did.
But Bob Nielsen deserved it because USD had a historic season in Division I by getting to the quarterfinals and winning, was it 11 or 10 or 11 games?
11 games they won last season.
The Yotes won. So he deserved it. Good for him.
$340,000 base salary, as you see here, additional $60,000 for appearances. So it's pretty good. Guaranteed years on that. You see from the tweet from Jay Elson there, an enhanced assistant pool as well. The new AD down there, you wrote about this a few weeks ago.
The new AD is making changes. I'm hearing that he is raising money, more money than David Herbster raised in his time. He wasn't really a big fundraiser type of guy. This guy is. and South Dakota will not be his last stop. He'll be moving on to. He's going to take the Gene Taylor route, I would assume, at some point. But yeah, no, they're
interesting.
The Yotes are sinking some money into their football program, but I mean, the Yotes had everything go their way last year. Let's keep that in mind. They had a good team. Do not misunderstand what I'm saying.
Yep.
But they lost a number of guys who are NFL caliber, or at least getting a shot
Miles
in the NFL.
Harden got drafted.
Yep. And they won a lot of close games last year. They won a lot of close games.
Southern Illinois, North Dakota State, North Dakota comes right to mind. Those three right away.
They had to rally to beat Youngstown, I think, Vermillion. So there's an NDSU kind of, I think, showed them who was boss in the playoffs, and poor Aiden Bauman got just pounded, knocked out of the game for a bit there. And so we'll see how the Yotes bounce back this year.
They have an FBS game at Wisconsin. That's going to be an awfully tough game.
Would that be fun?
Oh, God, Madison? Yeah, sign us up for that. At Portland State, who's not very good. Drake, and they play Northern State. They play a Division II game to start the season, so I don't care for that.
Them and the Jacks both, Augustana
both
and
did
Northern,
that,
dumb.
Their Valley games, Mike, they go to Youngstown, they go to Brookings, they go to Grand Forks. The Bison go there to end the season. The last week of the season,
be a big
actually.
game.
That could be a huge game
at
at the end of November.
For sure.
They have Southern Illinois at home. They go to Murray, and they have Northern Iowa. We were just talking about Northern Iowa. We don't know really where they shake out, but this is the time of year when all the polls start coming. Sam Herder has his top 10, and no surprise who the top 4 are in that. And that's something we've talked about forever and a day. That's what's going to be the case going forward.
Yeah, especially when you're having Mercyhurst, and those schools are the
West
new
Georgia's
FCS.
a new FCS team too. Yep.
So it's even more than ever, it's going to be those 4 teams are going to be in the top 5, at least to start the year and possibly to end the year every year. Used to be we've gone over this. James, there's no power in the East anymore. It's all gone. The Southeast and the East, all of those teams are gone from FCS.
Correct.
And so you're left with the middle of the country and the Mountain West.
That's what I'm saying. If it was not one of those 4, a combination of those 4 in Frisco, I'd be stunned in January. If it's not SDSU, Montana State, NDSU, SDSU, NDSU.
Right.
You know what I mean? If it's not one of those combinations, I would be floored, frankly, if it's not.
Yeah, well, we have to see how
things
things shake out. I mean, can another school,
like Idaho did last year,
like in Idaho,
or Albany did?
Those teams always get exposed eventually. I mean, we've learned that. I mean, Incarnate Word a couple of years ago was supremely talented offensively with the quarterback. They couldn't stop anybody defensively, and it caught up with them eventually in Fargo.
I want to address one thing before we go, and that was on the Northern Colorado news yesterday. Not huge that UNC's men's golf team, along with Weber State, are joining the Summit League, but it is a second sports program now affiliated with the Summit, Mike, because baseball is obviously an affiliate member there. You and I both visited with Summit League Commissioner Josh Fenton and brought up Northern Colorado as a possible expansion candidate. He didn't dismiss it, but in the word salad way that Josh talks, it was still kind of vague out there. Is this another bridge to them possibly getting an invite?
It sure seems like it.
That's what I thought.
What Fenton told us in Sioux Falls was the presidents very much want to expand.
They have to.
The Summit League has to expand, whether that's to 10, whether it's 12, whether it's to 14. We don't know. The bigger, the better is kind of the theme in college sports. But, we've done all the who could it possibly be. There's just no good choices. And Northern Colorado is a good choice. And it would be a travel partner for Denver, which is huge. People in the Summit League that I've talked to, they're all like, the obvious one is Northern Colorado. But when you put that out there yesterday, you got immediate pushback from Matt Brown. Writes a newsletter focused on, realignment type of stuff. He said, I'm not hearing that, but I'm going to trust her instincts here. I think there's.
Now,
I'm not saying anything's imminent.
No,
but I would just about guarantee there's been conversation.
Correct. The rub on it is football. What do you do with them with football? Is that a solid that Josh Fenton and Patty Riverito say, hey, well, you take Northern Colorado, they can come in for football. It's not a great ad in football because they're bad in football.
But they also just added Murray State.
They did.
And so, which much to my consternation. And so they already have a bad team that they added. And so what difference does it make? I mean, at this point,
Then you have 12.
Yeah,
And, you like that. I guess scheduling-wise, it makes it for the Summit. They need it. They need an even number of teams right now because it's not manageable.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what Northern Colorado thinks. I don't know if they would rather be out of the Big Sky. I've kind of heard some of those rumblings, like they would be willing.
It's not worked out for them in the Big Sky.
I've also heard that the rest of the Big Sky would be fine if they left.
They left, yes.
I mean, again, it's all just fourth-hand talk at the Summit League tournament, but there's enough smoke there.
Correct. I think there's something brewing. We'll see on that front. We got to roll. Summit League softball tournament begins today down in Brookings. Bison will face Kansas City, and Bison baseball team is a huge series with South Dakota State. That begins this weekend as the Bison sit currently in 3rd place in the league standings, trying to catch St. Thomas and Omaha. Thanks for coming by, bud. Always great to see you.
Yep.
Mike McFeely joining us here on this week's edition of the Bison Media Zone. We're back next Wednesday at 10:30 on WDAY Xtra. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next week.